It's my great pleasure to be here today. My name is Garth Stevens. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, and of course the School of Education falls within the Faculty of Humanities at Wits here. So great to be here and to be chairing this particular panel. And it's really my pleasure to also welcome all of you, but most importantly also, as we get to a kind of crescendo after a day and a half, to welcome the Honourable Minister, Dr. Nzimande, of course our Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology, and then also our own Vice-Chancellor and Principal, Professor Zeblon Vilakazi. This particular session, I know, the original program said it would last for about 3 hours. We'll probably go for about 2 hours till about 4 o'clock, I think, and we'll play it by ear. I'm going to obviously the Vice Chancellor and the Minister will have some time with all of you. We'll do a little bit of a Q&A at some point, and then there is a panel a little later on as well. So without further ado, I really do want to welcome Professor Zeblon Vilakazi as the Principal and Vice Chancellor, and just to indicate again that Wits has always been a place of robust engagement, but respectful engagement, and so I hope that as we reach a crescendo today, that kind of engagement will persist for the rest of the afternoon. So thank you very much. Vice Chancellor, over to you.
Thank you, Program Director. As I walked in earlier, I bumped into the Minister, who certainly in this space here needs no introduction. I thought probably I should be introduced. I'm Zeblon Vilakazi. I'm the person who works on the other side, on the 11th floor, as the Vice Chancellor, because the Minister knows more people than I do here. So as he walked in, he was greeting everyone, and I didn't know all the people. So I guess I have to reintroduce myself. Distinguished Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Nzimande, Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Garth Stevens, and the Program Director, the Head of the School of Education, Prof. Primuthal, the Sachi Chair in Skills Development, Professor Stephanie Alley, and the Director of the Real Center, which is hosting this event this afternoon, Dr. Ramsani. It's my pleasure to take this moment to share with you my impressions of the university, which the Minister will elaborate on as our keynote addressee. Wits enters its second century this year, having been established in the aftermath of the miners of the strike, the white worker strike, Minister, in 1922. The day of our official inauguration was in March, but there was the white mine worker strike around that period, which SMART had to deal with, and then our official birthday actually was shifted to October. This university's birth pangs have been at the center of the country's evolving sociological point of conflict throughout this growth, which is the signature of this university. We are where everything happens. For the last 100 years, we have nurtured intellectuals and innovators, discoverers and originators, problem solvers and problem posers, activists, artists, critical thinkers, and thought leaders. Indeed, as a university, we are proud to say that we punch above our weight. Notwithstanding our limitations as a school, society, brought up in a society ravaged by the swashbuckling rule of the nationalists. Wits researchers continue in tackling problems of the 21st century and preparing for the next generation of scholars to address the challenges of the future, some of which are unknown. And it is actually where you educators play a central role, because the future of education, the kind of skills we'll need in the future, will be shaped here. And therein lies the challenge for you. This center, the Real Center, is pivotal in playing a key part in driving this. I'd like to congratulate the director of the Real Center, Professor Pressure Ramsarap, I apologize, and their team on this important event and milestone. Real Center is important and plays a pivotal part in the Wits' broader research agenda. It's an exemplar of interdisciplinary research with excellent relationship across the university, the country, the continent, and indeed beyond. In 10 years, this is a great year of celebrations. The 100th anniversary of the university, 100th anniversary of the University Press, the 60th anniversary of the Wits Choir, and the 20th anniversary of the Wits Art Museum, and now the 10th anniversary of Real. So the timing of Real follows perfect mathematical logic. The role of education in society for social and economic development cannot be overstated. It is urgent to address inequality and deal with some of the global challenges the world has to contend with that can not only be solved by us, but by the whole world. Among others, issues of inequality and global climate change. That is an existential problem the world faces. We are proud as Wits that the Center has produced a prestigious South African Research Chair initiative in skills development in form of Professor Ale. Through her work with the chair, she has made a pivotal contribution to the work done by the center and the work of the university, and I do believe has been acknowledged by the minister through his presence here, that this place is central in driving our new approach towards skills development and preparing our future, our youth, for the future of work. It has made a strong and original contribution to academic research, to the bodies of knowledge in analyzing skill formation and its role in the economic and social development. Obviously, being a research center is measured by metrics, academic journals, outputs, of which has been extremely outstanding in its performance. And I think to actually mention that will be to praise the bird for flying. That is what is expected of a center led by a scholar of your distinction, Prof. Ale. And I don't give praises easily. Indeed, Mr. Minister, it's a great pleasure and privilege to have you here. You are indeed a scholar. We are certain that we look forward to seeing you post your life. As I said earlier in our private conversation, that you said you are too old to come back. I said that scholars and academics and professors never die, but they lose their faculties. So, Minister has strongly supported research, and I bore witness to that myself throughout my career. Leadership in difficult times, being able, and I'm going to say this in a pointed way, in 2015 and 16, to actually answer the right questions about whether or not can the country afford free education or not. And you actually took that bold decision, which you're all aware of, and you're always supportive of the higher education system. I'm deviating from the script here, because I'm speaking to you directly, because we are right in the eye of the storm. And you were one of the very few politicians who have said, this is not the way to go. And I think for that, it speaks about you, not only as a political leader, but as a scholar, because you put the centrality, search for information, search for the truth, as a centrality even in your position as a minister, for which I'm eternally grateful as a leader of one of the country's institutions that were right at the heart of this eye of the storm. I'm thankful for that. Minister, we look forward to your input and your views on priorities for research on education and training in post-school system. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Vilakazi, and for your very kind introduction. Thanks to the program director, the executive management of Wits University, the heads of schools. I don't know whether I'm old-fashioned when I'm talking about deans of faculties. You know, these days I'm never sure what's the difference between a school and a faculty. In our days, it was a faculty. But all of you who are here, being leaders in education, I greet you all. The president of the convocation, the director and management of the Real Center, student leadership if they are here, or representatives of labor, invited guests and members of the media if they are here, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me take this opportunity to thank the Vice Chancellor, Professor Zeblon Vilakazi, for his once more very warm welcome and introduction. I'm very pleased to be joining you today for a number of reasons. Firstly, to mark the centenary, I think, of Wits University. It's a very important year for you, and to say congratulations to Wits University. Indeed, in celebrating a centenary, we must not sweep our history under the carpet, though. Because these days, SAPC celebrates 80 years or whatever. It's like it's been an 80 years of wonderful, great work. No, we can't do that. The history of Wits University, and I think you hinted strongly, Professor Vilakazi, has been a history of uneven development, contradictions, and a site of struggles against colonialism and apartheid. Wits University, in fact, was founded as a mining school, essentially to support what we later called the minerals energy complex, founded on the base of cheap African labor and the super exploitation of that labor. The mining industry, in fact, has historically been very central in what became known in the language of some political parties as colonialism of a special type, where both the colonizer and the colonized majority shared the same territory. What this means is that as we are gathered here today, this we should see as part of the continuation of the struggle to transform Wits University away from its origins into becoming a truly South African and African university. I'll come back to this in terms of the role of Real. However, having said this, at the same time, as we celebrate the centenary of Wits University, we must also celebrate the many heroes and heroines who continued to struggle for a better and a different university, even in the darkest days of colonial and apartheid rule. Today, we must remember the likes of David Webster and many others. David Webster, of course, was assassinated by an apartheid regime that was threatened by, amongst other things, progressive research and progressive scholars. We must also celebrate the many other academics and students who sought to challenge the dominant discourses and practices and Wits in order to build a non-racial and progressive institution. Ever since this university, of course, has been the epicenter of knowledge, growth, and social justice, coexisting, of course, with discourses that were supporting and strengthening racism, patriarchy, and class exploitation. But nevertheless, Wits has maintained its legacy of excellence by also at the same time providing quality higher education and staying at the forefront of innovation. This, of course, would not have been possible without the role played by distinguished former and current students, university vice chancellors, council members, trade unions, and so on. This university has produced many graduates who have made and continue to make their mark in South Africa and around the world. Some of them are well-known luminaries in this country. Ruth First, who, by the way, we've just commemorated the 40th anniversary of her assassination. Barbara Hogan, Nadine Godimer, Julie Dlamini, who I think is your chancellor now. And as I was sitting with Professor Derek Swartz saying, who else? Who are other women who graduated from Wits? So we come across Mary Malahlela, who in 1948 became the first black female medical practitioner who graduated from Wits University. I'm glad when the VC were talking about this said, perhaps something needs to be named and honored after her. I'm one of those, by the way, who is very sick of everything that is named after politicians. I am sick of that. With due respect, you have Nelson Mandela settlements, hundreds of them, Joe Slovo, hundreds of them, but we don't honor ordinary South Africans who made a huge contribution, but were not in the headlines. So it would be good to honor Mary Malahlela as Wits University. And of course, we have others that we know, Bears Node, Nelson Mandela, Advocate George Bizos, Justice Arthur Chaskalsin, S.K. Mphahlele, Philip Tobias, and many others. So Wits has produced. Indeed, I must say, I do regard the work of Real as building on these proud struggles for progressive academic practice and research. Indeed, one such eminent person is your own Vice-Chancellor, Professor Vilakazi, which, as you all are aware, has also been invited to become a Fellow of the Royal Society, joining the likes of other luminaries such as Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, Albert Einstein, Dorothy Hodgkin. We are very proud of you, Prof, for these achievements. It shows also what our institutions are capable of doing. I see now we are producing a new Vice-Chancellor for the University of the United Nations, just from across the road, from the University of Johannesburg. We are here, of course, to mark a very important milestone, that of the 10th anniversary of the Center for Researching Education and Labor, RIAL. There could have been no better celebration, of course, than the launching of 5 books, which RIAL has participated in their research and production. Maybe before I venture into the main purpose of my today's speech and activities, let me point out that, of course, our event takes place in a very important month, which is Women's Month, which we are celebrating under the theme, Women's Socio-Economic Rights and Empowerment, Building Back Better for Women's Resilience. As always, we try to make Women's Month to be a call to action for all of society to take tangible steps forward in responding to the most persistent challenges affecting the lives of women and girls. I therefore would like to use that this is Women's Month to call upon all of us to ensure that in our places of work, we must implement interventions to transform the society, particularly the transformation of unequal power relations between women and men, while also at the same time focusing on addressing gender oppression, patriarchy, sexism, racism, ageism, which is a new phenomenon, structural oppression, and creating a conducive environment that enables women in particular to take control of their lives. I must also commend the very important attempts by RIAL to mainstream gender issues in its research work. However, I want to pose a challenge to you and to all other gender activists, academic and research institutions, that the struggle to transform gender relations in society will always be half complete, will always be incomplete until and unless we also begin to focus on the boy child and young men in society. The engagement and mobilization of boys and young men is very important in even fighting against women's abuse, as it is from the ranks of the boys and men that it is from within the ranks of boys and men that we also breed perpetrators of gender-based violence. We have done relatively okay as a country in affirming women, but the struggle is half complete unless we also attend to the boy child and young men in particular. In your research, therefore, as RIAL, I also urge you to focus and integrate the issue of masculinities that are being forged in society, not least in education institutions and workplaces. Some of my colleagues and comrades, they fight me, especially those who come from provinces that still practice the cultural tradition of going to the mountain by boys. Because I say, I would really like to know, because they say that's a secret. If you come from KZN, where Shaka banned this practice years ago and say, rather train men in military strategies. We are still living with the results of that, by the way, in KZN. But they say, no, Minister, you can't. You've never been to this. It's a secret. But there can't be anything that's a secret. What are we telling the boys when they go to the mountain? But I'm not only concerned about the mountain, I'm also concerned about wherever boys are gathered. What do we tell them, including in the families? That is a very important exercise. I must say, by the way, that I want to champion this in post-school education and training, this issue of the boy child and young men in particular, because we have lots of them in our universities, in our TVET colleges, and so on. Being inspired, by the way, of late by a program led by UNESCO to focus on gender transformation, that focuses on gender transformation and masculinities. I know this is for projecting now. It's a pity there are no longer those things, because they've got a very interesting title of one publication of the study they've done in India titled Transforming Mentalities, but it's written as MEN in inverted commas and then talities. So we are transforming the mentalities of men. It's a very interesting study. I would actually say, please go Google it and find out more. Allow me, of course, to also congratulate the Real Center on its 10th year anniversary. Perhaps not too many people are aware, Prof. That's why you were surprised when I was greeting so many people here. I said, well, this is the education space, you know? So you shouldn't be surprised. If I didn't know quite a number of people here, you should have been worried. I'm seeing old ex-colleagues, for instance, that are here, faces that I haven't seen also for a long time. Many people are not aware of the role played by Real and a number of its researchers in the originating and evolution of the concept of post-school education and training. Real has been a very important partner, albeit through critical engagement in shaping the agenda of the Department of Higher Education and Training. At some stage, Matsileng here was my special advisor and was part of drafting the white paper, by the way, which was adopted by Cabinet in 2013. So that's why I'm not in a foreign land. I'm amongst very important colleagues. And I want to thank you for your research support as Real to my work that I've been doing, and of course your critique as well, because we would not have made the kind of progress we have made, albeit with many challenges that still lie ahead. I see also Usispedi Welapa, somebody else who's would look me at the face and say, Minister, you are wrong. This is not the direction that you must take, you know? Real's ability to conduct cutting-edge research, offering teaching programs and providing support to policymakers and regulatory institutions on areas of theoretical, practical, and policy concern has made this institution, by the way, an indispensable research center for the Department of Higher Education and Training, our country, and indeed our continent. I'm not making an exaggeration just because I'm on a Real platform. I'm talking now from practical experience in interacting with this entity. Real, at least to me, has also built on the foundations of progressive research and scholarship in the tradition of the education policy units of yesteryear. What was the model of the EPUs? The education policy units, founded in the 1980s. The EPU model was largely based on forging a link between, on the one hand, the struggles of ordinary South Africans on the ground for a liberated and non-racial, non-sexist education in South Africa, and on the other hand, progressive research and academia. The EPU model also laid the basis for the many progressive education policies of the democratic government since 1994. I must congratulate Real for following in this great tradition, albeit in a new post-1994 reality, by ensuring that its academic and research practice is firmly located and anchored in contributing towards transforming especially post-school education and training in line with the overall developmental objectives in our country. It's very important. We have chosen to actively interact with policy and not adopt this thing that to be a good academic is to be anti-government at all times. It's just to adopt a negative stance at all times. I appreciate that Real has not done that, but also has not mollycoddled us and told us what we want to hear. As I've been saying, they've been telling us the real truth, whether we like it or not. We do need such institutions if we are to build the South Africa that we want. Now, on the research agenda then of Real, the real research agenda, how does that sound? Allow me to further congratulate you on the 5 books that we are launching. Setting Out Education by Matsileng Stefani Alais, Knowledge Curriculum and Educational Preparation by Stefani and Yael Shalem, Green Skills Research, very important, by Ureta Rosenberg and other authors, Transitioning Vocational Education and Training in Africa, by the Vocational Education and Training Collective, Higher Education and the Public Good in Africa. I see some familiar names who have participated in this, like Elaine. Is she here?
She's not here.
She's not here. Is she in the UK?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see Jackie here in front of me. You know, I'm also seeing other faces that I know. Now, the dimension of Real's work of publishing in leading national and international journals, as well as in books, is very important in understanding the complexities of the relationship between education and work. Now, these books that we are launching today, they grapple with the role that education and training can play to enable new entrants to access the economy and for workers to retain their work in different contexts, and the role of education and training in this regard. Real is also focusing on a very important theme for our post-school education and training system. That is the question of transition from learning to working. This is a very important transition for our young people especially, because it often means the difference between remaining trapped in poverty or accessing post-school education and prospects for a better life. That's how crucial this transition period, which is the period between 15 to 24 years. Usually for many South Africans, you either make it or you remain trapped in poverty forever. So it's a very crucial area, this issue of transition from learning to working. I would like to see Real, for instance, strengthening research into obstacles and factors that facilitate placement, especially of students in workplaces, as part of strengthening our vocational education and training in particular. Please also interrogate my assumption. I've got an assumption from my experience that South African employers in general, with fewer exceptions, are way behind their counterparts in other middle income and even developed countries insofar as absorbing students for work placement and even in training, because they are used to cheap labor. South Africa has been built on the back of cheap labor. Even the training that was happening under apartheid, it was mainly for young white students or artisans. Am I right? Real has to tell us, am I right in this assumption? If I am right, how are we to change that? Because we cannot talk about the relationship between education and work without also interrogating the issue of availability of workplaces for students And for TVET colleges, for lecturers as well. I always use this example, Matseleng must be bored now to hear me, that some of our TVET colleges are still teaching students their textbooks on how to fix a Valiant. Okay, I'll see those who will smile, who was of my age, you know. There's no Valiant now. They are modern cars. So lecturers must also ideally go to a workplace for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, so that they know about cars that are on the road. The nexus between education and workplaces, which is where really you are, as Real, doing very important research, is particularly a complex one, especially under capitalism. I want to put that bluntly. Because, as I say, capitalism survives on cheap or constant cheapening of labor. And what are the methodologies and other strategies do we need creatively to help in the development of new models of workplaces outside just the narrow strictures of corporate capital? I want to also say that two other most intractable challenges, these are my frustrations, Professor Villagas, as a minister, I want to say it, which is faced by our post-schooling system, is that of the issue of articulation and recognition of prior learning. These are two very important things. If you don't have that, stop talking about post-school education and training. If you don't have articulation in the system, if you don't have recognition of prior learning, it ain't post-school education and training, it's something else. Yet my experience tells me that there is still lots of resistance in the post-school education and training sector. And I want to say this, Professor Villagas, my sense is, especially universities, I think there is still a sense of elitism by universities and do not want to relate to the rest of the post-school education and training system. And if we allow universities to continue to do that, in the end, even they themselves are not going to survive. Because my own research, helped by Riel, by the way, tells me that possibly 60 to 70% of our students that start at university should not have started there. In Germany, only 30% of students who leave school go to university. They become 70%, they become apprenticed, most of them. Some will continue with universities later. Now we have got this system. You must go to school, you must pass matric. Not just pass matric with an A, and then go to Wits University. If you don't go that route, you are a nobody. It is in the interest of the universities to change that. That is why one of the things I want to do now, I will use both incentives as well as the whip in relation to our universities to say, we say now universities must do 4 things. It's teaching, learning, research, community outreach. The 5th thing now that must be a requirement is support for the rest of the post-school education and training system. To train TVET college lecturers, to train lecturers for community colleges, which were adult education centers, it should be ingrained in our university system to actually do that. And also then have an articulation within the system such that you can move in and out of our post-school education and training system as you like, as long as you are able to meet certain requirements, and not these blockages that we have in our system. I'm glad Riel is researching and tackling those issues, because that's my biggest frustration as a minister in trying to say articulation, articulation, articulation. Our Department of Science and Innovation is deeply involved, for instance, in the development of alternative sources of energy. I lead, as Minister of Science, what we call our Hydrogen Society Roadmap. Now, what does this call for, amongst other things? New skills. I see you doing work on green skills, that's very important. But also, what kind of skills do we need if we are to build a green economy? That is very important. The Department of Science and Innovation, for instance, has developed a decadal plan, 2021 to 2031, on strengthening the role of science, technology, and innovation in the development of our economy. REAL must help us in identifying the skills required for these priority programs and how to accelerate their production. I'm also very happy to see a link with the Council for the Development of Social Science Research in Africa, CODESTRIA, especially in the book on higher education and the public good in Africa, as well as the partnerships we have forged with other universities in the continent and, of course, in the north of the globe. Your work further underlines the importance, by the way, of strengthening social sciences and humanities in our university system, and generally in the post-school education and training sector. In a way, I'm very glad because I'm being proven right. When I established the National Institute for Humanities and Social Sciences, I became very unpopular among some in the Department of Science and Technology then, and in the National Research Foundation. What was I responding to? I was responding to the fact that the NRF was only defining science as natural science, which is incorrect. I always ask people, if an engineer builds a bridge, who are you building that bridge for? For human beings to use that bridge. Not for some robots. For human beings that are alive. COVID-19, by the way, taught us that as we enter the age of pandemics, we need multidisciplinary research to support that. The impact, for instance, of COVID-19 is not only a biomedical issue, it's also a social issue. Therefore, the issue of promoting multidisciplinarity is very important. Even at UNESCO, by the way, we are still fighting this. There is an Assistant Director General for Science, and then there's an Assistant Director General for Humanities and Social Sciences, as if the two things need to be treated differently. The work you are doing shows the importance of social sciences and humanities to strengthen them. By so saying, Prof, don't look at me as if I'm anti-biomedical sciences or natural sciences. Not at all, I am a champion for those. But we can't focus on one at the expense of the other. I know our country needs students who understand and not scared of mathematics as I was at school, because we need to produce more of those. I would like, therefore, having said all this, to encourage you to strengthen collaboration that REAL has with my two departments. I'm inviting you. The door is open. This will add on the collaboration that you already have with the National Research Foundation, the SRC projects on the pathways, and I would also like to see more collaboration between your center with our other institutions such as the HSRC and the NIHSS that I've just spoken about. Another potential source of collaboration is with the CSIR, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Now, all this is possible, by the way, because at the moment it's under one minister. Higher education and training and science and innovation. Huge potential to create what we call a higher education, science and innovation landscape. The interrelationship between skills and innovation. So REAL, you are more than welcome to work with my institutions. If they block you, you tell me. This strategic realignment, Imran, you are here, we are listening. It's good my DDG from DSI is here. You are not going to tell me what is REAL wanting in the CSIR. This strategic realignment further opens huge opportunities in the production of both knowledge and skills. Within my Department of Higher Education and Training and my department also of Science and Innovation, I talk like that not because I own the department, sorry. We also adopted a holistic approach, as I have said, in relation to COVID-19, which showed the importance of multidisciplinarity, amongst other things. In moving towards concluding, let me also highlight something that Rial already knows and you are part of, and we would like you to invite that you work more with us as we now are beginning to work towards producing what we call a master skills plan for the country. One country, one skills plan. We need your research support desperately. I know that you have done a lot of work already in conducting evaluations as well as conceptual and empirical research that has found ways to inform our policy in many ways. By the way, also, I don't want to be misunderstood, Matsilen. When I'm talking about your important work of the relationship between education and work, I don't want to reduce our education simply to be producing labor. Because education, yes, produces labor, but it does more than that. Also, I'm a great believer in theory, by the way. Because theory is foundation of knowledge. So you should theorize unapologetically this relationship as well. Not only respond to Nzimande who's saying, how many TVET college graduates are you going to place for me? How many universities of technology graduates are you going to place for me? I need that, but also you need to unapologetically theorize that, because theory is very important. Perhaps one way of summarizing what I've been saying about the important work that is being done by Rial is that you are making an important contribution in addressing what I believe to be at the heart of transforming of our higher education, science and innovation landscape, which is the agency and necessity to transform the relations of knowledge production in our country. It is a fact that our knowledge and its production is still very much embedded in the class, race, and gender contradictions that are still pervasive in both South African society and academia. That's a fact. Lots of things we teach unproblematically are very patriarchal. And also they've got elitist orientation, many of them in some respect. I'm not saying, by the way, there shouldn't be elite things in universities, but I am talking about the character of knowledge that we actually produce, that sometimes is very distant from some of the issues that we have to deal with. As I have said, my ministry and its two departments see Rial as an important partner in our journey to transform these relations of knowledge production, and especially in our post-school education and training system. Once more, thank you very much, Professor Vilakazi, and your management for supporting this center, amongst other things. It's a very important center, not only for DHET, but for our country, because it's doing work that is very important. I wish you all the best. You have an ally in me, but you won't be my ally if you only tell me what I want to hear. I also want critique. I'm not one of those ministers who's scared of critique. It's absolutely necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. I think it's a great way to really take us into the afternoon session. I said earlier on that this is the kind of crescendo of the last day and a bit. And I think that that really sets the tone for some conversations from here onwards about how it is that we think about schools of education, faculties of education, and their relationships to the post-schooling education sector more broadly. Vice-Chancellor, also just to thank you for your input this afternoon. I always say to the Vice-Chancellor, he may be a physicist, but he always articulates history and he's able to traverse a huge number of subject domains. And actually, I think you're a closet humanities scholar. So come back to us, you know. Minister, you know, you were erudite today. I think you spoke a little bit about articulation and alignment, recognition of prior learning, late capitalism, the unevenness in the post-schooling education sector, the history of our university, critical masculinities and gender, education systems as modular but articulated, the green economy, etc., etc. All I can say is, when you're no longer interested in politics, there's always a place for you in the academy. So it's not too late to make a U-turn. Colleagues, I think that we have some opportunity. I checked with the minister if he was happy to take a few questions and for us to do a little bit of a Q&A or a conversation as we wrap up this afternoon. And so I'm going to open up for a few minutes. I know that we don't have lots of time. I'm going to open up for a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes or so, to see if there are any questions, comments, engagements with what the minister has really been speaking about, but also the broader theme of how it is that universities relate to the education system more broadly at this particular juncture in our history. So I'm going to open it up at this point. Can I see if there are any questions or comments?
Good afternoon, Minister. I'm always excited to hear the DHET's role in recognition of prior learning, because I'm really passionate and I see the vast opportunity there is, and I was very excited when you produced that national coordinating policy. But it seems to have slipped off the radar slightly again. Sorry. And I was wondering whether DHET is going to be pushing it more strongly again as a tool for transformation and redress, particularly in the occupational and vocational sector, where we have such a wide range of people who need that recognition so desperately. Thank you.
Thank you.
I read an article by IOL a couple of weeks ago where you were reported to be complaining that TVET college students or graduates are not finding employment. What is the reluctance from your perspective, your understanding by industry to absorb the TVET graduates? Probably last question. You also say universities have 4 responsibilities, and you added the last one, that they need to support TVET colleges. Often than not, companies complain about poor and weak quality coming out of colleges, and amongst others, they mention the lack of industry experience by the TVET lecturers. What is it that the department is doing to close that gap? Thanks.
Thank you for your address, Minister. My question is about the relationship between post-schooling education and the growing informal market. Post-schooling, both TVET and university know how to prepare for the formal market, for occupations of certain kinds, but in the last 2 days and in other forums, we are hearing a lot about the growing informal market, and I was wondering what's your thoughts about the relationship between education, formal education, and work in the informal market.
Thanks.
Prof, I did a module. I'm an industrial psychologist by training. I did a module called Economics in Industrial Psychology, which is design of space such that it suits the use by human beings. Normally these things, I normally just appear by my hair, so I'm very pleased that at least this is the education school of Wits. They understand these things. Look, I did say that I've got many headaches. If you're a minister, we've got thousands of them. But the 2 big challenges that I have is the issue of mainstreaming articulation, as well as the issue of recognition of prior learning. Even in the public service, by the way, you still have resistance to recognition of prior learning. I always tell people about Joe Slovo. When Joe Slovo was admitted at Wits, he had only secondary education. He didn't have matric. But through recognition of prior learning, Slovo was admitted in the law faculty, and he became one of the best lawyers we had. you know, okay, decided to take up arms later. But I always, you know, today I deal with, you won't believe this, a TVET college lecturer who is 48 years old with a master's degree, who can produce, applying for another job, a matric certificate. And then it's simply said, you don't have a matric certificate, we won't consider you. In fact, some of them have been expelled. How come you are here without a matric certificate? But the person has been working and has got a master's degree. And before, by the way, you could access, as I say, university without a matric because of recognition of prior learning. It's still a struggle. That's why I was saying we need to do all we can. Myself and the department are very determined to mainstream recognition of prior learning. There's lots of work, I don't have time to talk about it now, that we are doing to make sure. We are also engaging, by the way, the National School of Government, in government, as well as the Department of Public Service and Administration, just to start there, to actually understand that there is knowledge that is acquired through experience, because that is what recognition of prior learning is. And it's a practice throughout the world. Some people call it lowering of standards. That's out of ignorance, frankly, if you call it that. So yes, we are still going to do more. Since you are passionate about it, you are my ally. You know, we need more people like yourself, I mean it, that we can actually be able to work together on this. That's why I was encouraging Riel to please help us to pay more attention on this. Well, reluctance by companies to absorb TVET college students, well, it's multifaceted. Let me also be honest, let me not just blame companies, but also we should also blame ourselves as the democratic government. I can't blame the apartheid government because it had no interest in educating the majority. Can blame them for not having done those things. But we were not expecting much out of that system. On our side as government, we never really took vocational education seriously. Professor Vietekent here can be my witness. As government, we left it to provinces as FET colleges. No relationship with industry. They were nothing more than glorified high school, and we allowed wrong attitudes to spread about TVET colleges that if you can't, it's like my maths teacher, by the way, who used to say, if you can't do my mathematics, go and be a policeman. Now, it's as if being a policeman is a bad profession, by the way, which is not at all, not at all. We are safe often because of the police. There's no profession or occupation that is not important. But there's still that attitude. If you're not performing well, go to a TVET college. As if TVET college is for dumb. I don't believe there's anyone who is dumb, by the way. It's just that we don't channel people correctly. So the combination of that with employers with a history of not being able to train has created this toxic environment for vocational education and training. That's what we are trying to rescue as the Department of Higher Education and Training, working with institutions like Riel and others. There's lots that we've done, by the way, to try on our side as government to improve this. Firstly, we've elevated the way how the population looks at TVET colleges. There's a big difference now than what it was 10, 12, 15 years ago. We introduced NSFAS, by the way, which was a way also of attracting students to TVET colleges. 4 universities, by the way, are now offering dedicated TVET college lecturer training qualifications. Nelson Mandela University is one of them. I can't remember the others, but there are 4. We want more universities to actually have that, because we have identified that as one big weakness. Sometimes you find students who have just completed, they turn lecturers at TVET colleges. So that's why I am saying universities have a role to play. Help us to train properly qualified TVET college lecturers, just as employers must also expose those TVET college lecturers to workplaces. So with that, I think that we can be, there's lots. We are also changing the curriculum, by the way, in quite a serious way. The other thing we've done with TVET colleges, we've established 26 what we call centers of specialization. These centers of specialization, we are saying, if Central Johannesburg College is good or has got potential to train good electricians, we're going to support it by giving it more resources and also putting it in touch with industry so that they really produce real good electricians. Another college may be good in welding, another one may be good in other artisan programs that we actually have mechatronics. Some of our colleges are good in hospitality, by the way. And we also then create these centers. So those are some of the things that we are doing. But the argument I'm making, without proper research support and universities supporting us with lecturers, we are not going to do this. Post-school education and training and the growth of the informal sector, I guess, that's what you are referring to, informal markets. One of the, we didn't neglect, by the way, since 1994, only vocational education. We also neglected adult education centers. 1994, virtually every university in South Africa had a center for adult education. All those are gone. There are very few universities with centers for adult education, which are providing important research support for models and to actually try and help to expand access to adult education in a country like ours where many, many people didn't even go beyond primary school. But those adult education centers, their big weakness is that they were focusing only on improving your formal education. If you left school in standard 7, you go to an adult school to do standard 8, standard 9, up to standard 10. But that's not actually even the majority of the needs of South Africans who have left school early. Many of them, they want a skill. How to fence, so that they can be able to make money by fencing in the rural areas, so that cattle do not wander into the roads. A 40-year-old woman who wants to learn how to bake in order to sell cakes in the nearby schools and be able to make a living. That is why we've now transformed, while we're in the process of doing so, adult education centers into what we are now creating, a community education and training sector. We've started piloting with some centers to say we must also begin to offer skills programs, short skills, in order for people to acquire the kinds of skills that they actually need. You have got people standard 7, standard 8, who are motor mechanics. We call them the bush mechanics in township language. And their major problem is that there are more cars that come into the yard than those which leave the yard. So we want to use community colleges to have those that come in are as equal to those who actually leave the yard. Sometimes there is no space because cars just come in, but they are not being fixed. We want to empower them. That's all they are interested in. They want to be qualified and be better motor mechanics. So we are strengthening the community education and training centers as a way of transforming adult education to respond to the variety of skills needs for South Africans. Those who want to do standard 8, standard 9, standard 10, your AEOU, that's fine. They can actually be able to do that, but we must have flexibility and so on. Mrs. Pennywa is amongst those that we've been working very closely with in actually supporting us. While she was here at Real, I still think she's possibly one of those professors, you are talking about, that you leave your faculty, but you never stop being a professor. Thank you very much.